It was almost like people were shouting across the table to communicate at all. That was the weak point of the way it was laid out in this big open room.
Well, they took care of that as much as they could. Afterwards, they kind of used, these basically artificial walls to basically break everything up, or they take people out to different rooms.
Okay.
And like at schools and stuff, they put them in different classrooms and stuff. Because that, I could see that would be a problem.
Yeah,
versus an open classroom where all the noise comes together.
Yeah.
Okay, something of a logistical issue with that, sure. But okay, so you didn't have people like kind of sitting on their hands and being very silent. They did seem willing to offer their opinions and wanted to contribute something. Is that correct? In general?
Well, I'd say so.
Go
ahead.
Having somebody like Mr. Holzendorf, and I think these people that headed the tables were selected for that reason. They were good at getting people who were being reticent or wallflowers, what it took to identify themselves and open up and so on. Because everybody, because they bothered to come to it, everybody had something to offer, and once you got them to open up a little bit.
This sounds similar to the prosperity, Blueprint for Prosperity breakout groups and workshops that we had years ago. Not too many years, just a few years ago we had those, and I can see the same pattern in these budget workshops, although I did not attend one, so I'm relying on your impressions with that. Okay, so then what would happen? You have discussion, you're all sitting there, and you define certain categories on the boards, on the...
Well, what you had is that you had a list of functions for that particular department, and then you would sit there and you would vote, on each one, say like must have, should have, nice to have, and don't want. And then at that point they'll tabulate all the all the votes, and then I guess you can have some discussion. It depends on how many responsibilities they have. And it might take some time to take time away from the discussion just to vote on so many.
You had maybe 30 different categories.
I don't think quite that much. I think the most I saw was maybe about 15.
Very good. And so I'm looking at more of a recap of things. Let's say we've got our department is public work or recreation. They have Ritz Theater and La Villa programming. Those are some inner city areas, right? And 35% of the participants said you must or should have. So those categories are strongly correlated. They're very close together. If you said we must have this or we should have this, you're essentially saying the same thing. That's what this is telling me. And then you go nice to have, you had 65%. So I read that as more of an optional category, and that's Ritz Theater and La Villa programming. So overall, 35% see this as part of the city budget, and 65% see it as optional, but 0% said they don't want it. So there's no real negative connotation to that. The Ritz Theater and La Villa Museum education programs, kind of half and half in the must and nice to have. Tennis facilities, 50-50, and then only 3% said they don't want tennis facilities in the city budget. Okay, that's a real tax cutter there. I see maybe.
That one has been very controversial over the last year or two. It comes up a lot in discussion.
Yeah, well, one of the things I thought that maybe they should really do differently is to maybe, instead of having those different categories for each responsibility, must have, should have, maybe it might be better just to rate, rank them Basically, okay, this is what you want the most, this is what you want the least. Maybe you could put a zero in there that indicates you don't want it. And the other thing, it was actually brought up in the JCCI study, is the idea that maybe you should include some numbers in here. Because it's like you put a bunch of people in a room with a lot of expensive items, and you say, what do you want? You don't have a cash register, you don't have price tags on it. Everybody's going to say, oh yeah, I want all of this. But if you put them in a room with a cash register and price tags on it, and you say, okay, now what do you want? People are going to say, ooh, that looks nice, but that's certainly expensive. Maybe we should look at these things better. So not putting any kind of price tags on any of these responsibilities, kind of, took away from, the kind of analysis you can do of these responsibilities.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think. And then in a case like that, you'd want people with, a fair amount of education to really understand, what they're doing. Or you could say maybe this particular function in government is 1% of our budget, and this one here is 50% of our budget. In the case of public safety, it is about that. But public safety was broken down into many, many categories. I think one conclusion is that people don't want citizen involvement in police functions, particularly. I noticed this from the results. And another thing, just kind of highlights of the results, is that housing for AIDS patients was turned down or had a negative rating by a lot of people. So it is kind of an interesting study, and
the Police Citizens Review Board that's also been very controversial seems to be met with much more resistance from everyone affiliated with the Sheriff's Department, more so than the public sector.
Yeah, we find that to be true, yeah. And then the overall ratings of the workshop, as we mentioned, out of a 4, the average rating was, let's say, 3.8, something like that, which is pretty high. Yeah. So, and I think you have said that overall it's a positive process. Now, and then the shortcomings or limitations, which are our bailiwick as members of the concerned taxpayers of Duval County, is that there was kind of a disparity of income and education, those levels being a little higher than the average for a representative sector of the county. And I noticed in their graphs, they start at high school education when in fact we have people that don't even have a high school education. So typically they didn't show up to this workshop, and as you might expect. But we have very short time. I want to thank our members, our treasurer, Conrad Markle, our secretary, Curtis Wolf. I'm Dave Smith. What did I?
You got juxtaposed, yes.
I got them reversed. And I'm Dave Smith, the Vice President of the Concerned Taxpayers of Duval County. Our website is there. Our phone number is there. Find out more about what we do. We are one of the few watchdogs on city government. Thanks for watching.